Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Hey friends, I'm so excited for you to hear my conversation today with my dear friend, Jen Liss. Jen and I met in January 2020. We were in an online program for budding entrepreneurs that were trying to figure out what was in our heart, what we wanted to do next, what our purpose and mission was. And I actually made so many fabulous friends, many of them that you've already heard on the podcast and will hear in the future. It was such a pivotal time for me personally, as well as in my entrepreneurial pursuits. But it's just been so amazing to watch each of these women evolve and change and grow into the best versions of themselves, and to either realize the dream business that they had when we first signed up for that course, or to go in a completely different direction that none of us saw coming, but we're all so excited to be along for the ride. Jen is a coach. She is a podcast host. She is working on her breathwork credentials. She has lived about 5 lives prior to this. She is just such a gem. Her actual bio reads, Jen Liss is a coach for those who are ready to untether from the crap that's holding them back and claim their own power. Known for her silliness, contagious enthusiasm, and engaging storytelling, she is serious about one thing: inspiring people to take action on their dreams. As the host of the podcast, Untethered with Jen Liss, she interviews people who've moved along their own successful journeys so others can learn to do the same. We talk about her podcast, how that changed. We talk about how this podcast has changed. We talk about having a lucky rock. We talk about adding practices to find joy and remember that feeling and call in that feeling multiple times a day. I could talk to this woman all day long, so this is a little bit of a long one, but I hope you will enjoy. I actually know you will enjoy this beautiful conversation with my dear friend, Jen Liss. Jen Liss, I am so excited to be chatting with you this morning. How are you?
I'm so excited to be chatting with you. I'm so good. And it's morning for you, but it's late night for me. And you're a morning person and I'm a night owl. And this is the best.
It's perfect. Yes, you're right. I am still in France. As we're recording this, I have a couple of more days of my month-long love fest here, and I'm so excited that I get to go out with a bang and chat with you today.
I'm so excited about it too. And it also feels like kind of exotic that I get to chat with you while you're there.
When I travel and I call Amelia, one of the first things she asks me is it dark there or is it light there? She thinks it's so fascinating that it's different from where she is.
I love that. Actually, we recently moved from Kansas to Portland, Oregon, and my own family, it's just like boggles their mind. Last night, my brother in law was like, look up at the sky, you can see Jupiter. And I'm like, it's bright as day out here. I can't see it right now. Give me 2 hours.
Oh, that's so funny. I've just loved watching your expansion and your evolution and the ways that you are consistently saying yes to yourself. It's such a joy, and I'm so thrilled to hear how you are implementing this gorgeous self-care practice into your day to day and how that is changing your circumstances, but also how that is changing you and how that's all playing out.
There's so many beautiful things wrapped into it. And I do have to go back to January of this year. I've been on this journey for a while, for a minute, but there was a turning point in January, Wendy, that you played a very pivotal moment for me. I had a conversation with you in January of this year, and you said a couple of things in that conversation. And I looked at you and was like, look at her. Like, I already knew you're awesome and you're amazing, but there was just this glow about you. And I was like, I want that. I want more of that. Give me more of that. So, some of the things that you said in that, and one of the biggest things was, I'm only available for that which delights me. When you said that statement, I mean, I think it every day of my life. I'm only available for what delights me. And that pulls me out of the funk that you can sometimes get in. I've been calling it the soup. I don't know why. What's up with the soup?
You love soup.
I
It's
do love
fall.
soup. It's fall. Yes. Yes. But sometimes it's more like chili or chowder and you're just like sludging through it. And that statement that you said just really pulls me out of it sometimes. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
my pleasure. And thank you. Thank you for your generous words. I receive them and appreciate that. When I started saying that, when I decided that was my mantra, it sounded so audacious to fall out of my mouth. Oh, I'm only available for what delights me. I'm just going to pick flowers today and take a bubble bath. And it's those two things wouldn't delight me if those were the only things I did in a day, because I actually delight in the work of my hands and I delight in taking care of my farm and taking care of my people and just being happy and twirling around every now and then. It certainly is not a departure from responsibility. It's just an intention in listening to my body, listening to my heart, to my intuition when I'm presented with an opportunity that allows my yes to be yes and my no to be no.
Yes, that's exactly it. Thank you for framing it up that way because you can just ask yourself that question in any moment and it helps you to see if there's contrast there or if it's like, oh yes, I am aligned. I do like cleaning up chicken poop or whatever it is that you haven't. I never clean up chicken poop, but it might be
It's
something that
my
you sometimes do.
daily.
Yeah. I do love to sit down and write an email. I love to write an email. I love to write newsletters. Those are things that I love to do. It legitimately delights me. That kind of work delights me, but so does taking a bubble bath. That's for dang sure. That also delights me. And so does peanut butter.
I have something to send you when I get back to the States. I will make you the gluten-free peanut butter and jam bars because they potentially are the best thing that come out of my kitchen. And anyone that loves peanut butter needs to have these, just like anybody who loves cheese needs to have Beecher's mac and cheese, which is why I had to meet you in Seattle to make sure that you had some of that.
Yeah. There's something about you, Wendy. You make a person feel so loved and so seen. And that day at Beecher's where you were like, I am not standing for you not trying this macaroni and cheese. Wendy and I met in Seattle. We got to meet in person, which was so awesome. And we went to this cheese place and I'm gluten free and they didn't have it at the place. So I couldn't get it in a little cup like everybody else was getting their mac and cheese. And she straight up bought me a whole pan of frozen mac and cheese, gluten free mac and cheese. And I just felt so loved. I felt so loved in that moment that also I knew how much you really care about mac and cheese.
And you. There was that is being the vibrational match of what you're asking for. I appreciate that too, Jen, because food is very much a part of my love language. And it's not just having you take the bite of the mac and cheese or the bite of the peanut butter and jam bar and making the good face and all of that. Like that is such a double blessing for me when someone eats something that I've made and there's a face that you make. There's a sound that you make when you eat food. I'm sitting in Jeff's kitchen right now, my friend Jeff, who is an amazing chef. And we just finished a week-long culinary trip with 5 fabulous women. And we cooked for a week and it was amazing. And it was so fun to watch them respond to his food the way I've been responding to his food for 25 years. And I just feel like it's this pause and this moment in time where you're just, yes, it's a double blessing. He feels good that they feel good about what they're eating. And I feel good that I brought it together. And I'm definitely living in a giant love fest right now.
It's like a big triple rainbow.
Totally.
And it's raining hearts.
Exactly. And we're bleeding champagne if we cut ourselves. It's all just good.
Love it. Love it. I know I've been watching your photos and the videos that you've been sharing. I'm just like, oh my goodness, it looks amazing. Looks amazing. All of those people who said yes to themselves and went on that trip, I'm sure there's zero regret and all the delight.
100%. And I love that the saying yes becomes a double blessing as well, because I said yes to myself and created the trip. Jeff said yes. His yes to himself, was a yes for me as well. The women that came, that was their yes, but it's a double yes. It gets to be really mystic math going on there.
Mystic math. I love that.
Yes.
But it's so true. When you say yes to yourself, it allows other people to say yes to themselves and it's becomes the big yes fest. And I didn't quite realize that until I started saying yes to myself. And then it's like you do start to see others do it too. You invite others up into that space along with you. And that's really what it's all about. And, is helping invite other people. You do it for yourself and then they come up. It's not that it happens outside of yourself and then you get to go up. It's like you get to say yes and then you lift.
It's true. And sometimes before the yes, we'll have a tally. How many times do we use the word yes in today's conversation?
I mean, it's only appropriate.
Right. Prior to the yes, it can feel like a yes for me is a no to somebody else. And when I'm operating from that mindset, more of a lack mindset, I think, well, if I say yes, then Amelia is going to miss out on something, or, because I'm doing something fabulous, she will be in some sort of form of lack because what I took from the pie has left a void. And actually, in a possibility mindset, in an abundance mindset, you take a piece of the pie, I take a piece of the pie, Amelia takes a piece of the pie, and the pie is whole again.
I love that you said that because it is so true. Like we can so easily, I think most of us have been brought up in a mindset of scarcity and lack and looking at it as if I take, that's taking from someone else, and I grew up in a big family. I have a lot of siblings and, you have that. Is there enough for everyone? You're always thinking about that. In my house, we always joke about this. Nobody takes the last piece of anything because it's like, when you grow up in a big house, it's like there could be somebody who hasn't had any yet. So I grew up in that mindset of always ensuring that everybody has enough, and breaking out of that mindset to see it differently has been such a journey for me. But I truly, now that I have said yes to myself, now that I have been through that experience, I see that it is flipped in the way that you're saying, where you do it for yourself, you do for yourself, and then you get to do for others in turn. It's so cool to experience.
Right. I think that a part of that shift of mindset comes from realizing or remembering that we are not the source of what we have. So when you look at the platter and there's one piece left, my mother is the source of everything that came on the platter. There's nothing else in the kitchen. So in that particular instance, that is the last piece. But when we are looking at things that are not in the physical realm, she could also make another pie. Like there is opportunity, but it's not as easy. But when we can shift to a realization, a remembering that God, the universe, is our source, and that his supply is endless, and that his desire is to give, because that is the consistent characteristic with love. And the universe is love. God is love. And there is not a short supply.
Jesus never ran out of loaves and fishes, right?
That is correct, ma'am. He didn't run out. There was enough, and there was an abundance for those that picked it up. In that story, it started with, 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And I don't know why it says fishes, 2 fish. I'm not sure.
Wait, it always
Grammar
was.
girl.
It's like the only time that I've ever said fishes and not wondered why. Why is it fishes?
Right. I think that's how we learned the story.
Children.
Right?
It's like a childhood thing, I'm sure.
It's so funny. When 12 disciples, picked up everything that was left over after the 5,000 men, plus women and children, ate, they picked up all that was left over, and there were 12 baskets, which, of course, in my growing up in church, that's the preacher's favorite part. So his third point of that sermon is 12 baskets, 12 people picked it up. There was more than enough for each of those individual people. So not only did God provide for all the people that were sitting there, he also provided for the people that were doing the good work. It's that mystic math. You actually don't have to figure it out. You will actually enjoy your time more if you don't try to figure it out. One of the most freeing concepts that I heard probably 2 years ago was that the how is not my responsibility. And I thought, oh, what a relief. Because I have really good ideas, but boy, can I go down the rabbit hole of how. How is that going to happen? How am I going to run a farm and lead a trip to France and be gone for a month and be a great mom and have a podcast and do, all the other fun, fabulous things that delight me. And then to be reminded that that is actually not my job. My job is to show up and do whatever is the next right step, and then to keep taking those steps. But the long game, that is in the hands of a higher force that I'm capable of. And those are actually my favorite situations, when something is so big that I can't even delude myself in thinking that I can make this happen. God has to show up. The divine has to show up. And I can't wait to watch that. I can't wait to witness it. I can't wait to be a part of that because it is for me, but also the benefits of those opportunities when the divine brings something so beautiful that's so much better than anything that I thought of. It is for me, but the impact is greater than just the gift that was for me.
Yeah, and trusting that it takes the pressure off, right? Like, the pressure's not on us. And I think those of us, when you say the how, the first time somebody said that to me, the how's not your business, or you don't need to worry about the how. I was like, but how do I not worry about the how? I didn't even understand the concept of that. And it has taken a lot of unraveling and practice, honestly, to get to the point of even truly understanding what the heck that actually means. And it is exactly what you're saying, at least from my perspective, is putting the trust, putting the faith that whatever is meant to be, whatever is meant to come, the desire that you put out there, it's already there and you're going to meet it at the right time. And that's something that you said. You came on my podcast a while back and we talked about, you said, it will meet me in the right moment. You said it so much more eloquently, Wendy.
Right. Our dreams will meet us. And I
Yes.
said, if these dreams are in you, these dreams are for you.
That's it. I love that. I love that.
Yes.
It's for
And
you.
God isn't mean. He doesn't just drop these lovely desires in our heart to tease us with what we can't have. He's not mean.
I mean, Beecher's mac and cheese exists, like if that can happen,
Beautiful.
that can happen. Anything is possible because it's
Anything
like
is possible.
the most
And I
amazing thing
just
on
love
earth.
that for them. When he's like, I just want to make good cheese. I don't need to change the world. I just want to make good cheese. He has completely changed my world by making that good cheese. And when I first tasted it over 20 years ago, it became my personal mission to have as many people on the planet try this mac and cheese, because I think all other macaroni and cheese is a waste of time and calories. And there it is.
I can't wait for him to come on this podcast.
When I'm totally fangirling over him. We will definitely link it in the show notes. And just so
Yeah.
people know, if you're dying for the mac and cheese now, you can order it and it comes frozen. And I am telling you, I've had a lot of this stuff in person. They also have, so it's at Pike Place Market in Seattle. Here's my little, we are not
Here's your little
sponsored by
advertisement.
Beechers, but let me just tell you where you can get yours.
This episode brought to you by Beechers.
That's right. Pike Place Market in Seattle, and then in the Flatiron District in New York, 20th and Broadway. You can have their mac and cheese. It's so life-changing, as I've mentioned 80 times now. But you can also get it frozen. Sometimes Costco has it because they started in Seattle, but you can order it from their website, as my husband's uncle does. Every Christmas, I receive 30 boxes of Beecher's mac and cheese. My freezer is so happy. My pants are so afraid. And I just love it. And I love that that's his signature gift. I feel very seen and heard and known. And I told him, this is the best present ever. You don't ever have to think of anything ever again. And I meant like, we're done, like you will never outdo it. And he instead took that as an invitation to repeat that gift every year.
It's amazing.
I'm so happy. I have dedicated section in my giant freezer that is for Beechers.
I'm so glad that we have had this cheesy digression so that I could learn this fact. Amazing.
Oh, it's so fun. And I can't wait to interview him on the podcast. And so it is.
Yep. And so it is. He's coming.
So you mentioned the delightful conversation that we had when I was on your podcast, and I'd love for you to tell us the progression of that, because you've just recently made some changes to your podcast as a part of this evolution that you're experiencing. And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, I have had such an evolution in the past year, and that evolution has only begun to accelerate in the past month or so. But when we had that conversation, because I was thinking about, we had it separately, but at the time I was thinking about restarting my podcast, and I had felt stuck for a while, and it had a name that was based on, for good reason, it was called the Creative Commute, and that's what it was. And so I ended up relaunching that. But then at the same time, I said yes to myself education wise and joined a program. And that program helped me shine a light on some major stuckness for myself. And it was amazing. What I learned in that course is all of the things that I feel like Wendy already knew that suddenly made sense to me, to be totally honest with you. And it was one of the biggest realizations that I had for myself is that I remember exactly where I was. I'm listening to this call. I've joined this call and I'm on a walk in the woods here in Portland, Oregon. And I had the realization that I am more comfortable being uncomfortable than feeling good. And that realization just hit my body like a ton of bricks. Like, what the heck? That's bizarre. Are you kidding? And I knew it. I was just like, how is that possible that I feel more comfortable being uncomfortable than feeling good? And that led to this just unraveling and me just kind of, going in and figuring out what's going on there. And then to relearn how to feel joy, to relearn how to feel pleasure, to relearn like all of the goodness in life that it's like I had just capped it. I had capped it so low for so long. And that uncapping of it has just opened up so much joy and abundance and goodness into my life. And it has just kind of snowballed in a way. But then I ended up realizing, okay, this podcast is so great. I love podcasting. I love the podcast, but something doesn't feel right about it. It needs something more. And so I'm in a mastermind, and that coach has helped me to figure out what that is. And I ended up rebranding the podcast to Untethered. And that podcast name, though, is like me. Like it's me. Like that's the life I want to live, is an untethered life. Like, that's what it's all about for me. And I just feel like there's so much expansion that happened with that shift and that realization in myself. And then changing the podcast was like this external reality, like me showing up in a way that's like validating to myself. Like, yes, it just feels so good. It feels so good. And then cool things have happened since doing that, like cool guests coming on my podcast, like just more and more alignment all over the place. I had the opportunity to do a speaking engagement and to speak, and that went really well. It's not something I ever thought I would do, but it came my way. So I'm just saying yes to the things that delight me, to the things that feel good, and they're coming more and more and more. It's so cool.
I love all of that. Oh my gosh. Okay. So many things. First, thank you for your kindness in saying that you were learning what you think I already know. And another beautiful concept that made so much sense to me. So you and I met almost 3 years ago, crazy, 2.5 years ago, in a program with Kathy Heller. And she said so many things that I thought, that sounds good. I don't actually get it, but it sounds like something I should remember. And one thing that she said was, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And, that's not her original line. She was just repeating somebody else's magic wisdom. It's so true. And even when she would say, rising tides raise all ships. And I thought, oh, that sounds like something.
I remember writing that down and being like, yes, that sounds really good, but I don't
understand what that means yet. And like having these conversations, and when we're in each other's DMs, it's like your wins catapult me to my next level, it's like we're all on these staircases that have a connected handrail so that we have these touch points that are together, and it's not a competition at all. It's just this desire to celebrate. I'm celebrating you in your wins, and it raises my frequency, and I can see my next step. It inspires me. That's inspiration. I love also how you could see, as if it was a door. I live in a really old house, so even if a door is shut, you can still see light coming from the other room.
Nothing's flush,
So
huh?
sometimes you can see light from outside coming in. It's fascinating just that visual of a door closed, but the light peeking in from the edges and knowing there's something on the other side of that door that's drawing me to it. And once you take the action of opening that next door, the flood of light, the flood of goodness, just the abundance that is there waiting for you, but it requires some action on your part. It requires you opening the door. It also requires you being available for what is good. That
Right.
great question in The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. How good are you willing to let life get? That is a question that we all have to ask. And the other thing that I want to just commend and applaud you for is you recognizing something that was a little shadowy about how you were feeling more comfortable being uncomfortable than feeling good. And instead of closing that up and putting that box away and just say, I would rather not explore that at this moment, you put your minor cap on and got a big flashlight and like you wanted to excavate that. Like that's juicy. Let's get on in there. And I think that I'm in a similar space where if something comes up that feels just not in alignment with who I am becoming, who I am becoming, I like, ooh, let's shine a light in there. Let's fix it. Let's get on in there because I want to feel good. I want to serve at my highest and best. And anything that is stopping me, I want to know about it so I can remedy it in a healthy way. And let's
Yeah.
get this train is leaving the station. Let's go.
Well, and I think those things come to us when we are ready to handle them. And you've done so much work to get to this point that when those things come up, you're like, I've got some tools in my satchel. I've got the flashlight. Previously I didn't have the flashlight. So who knows how many times that thought whipped around to me and I wasn't ready to receive it or I didn't have the tools to excavate it. It just wasn't there for me. And the idea of feeling good, like I always think of that like a breaker flipping. Like there's only so much good you can handle until you've allowed yourself to feel more. Like if you opened that door you're talking about and just got blasted by the light and you don't have your sunglasses on, like it's just like it could be too much. You're not ready for it. You're going to flip your breaker there. So it's like there is a condition. This sounds so silly because we usually think of working out as being like painful in order to, I've trained for marathons. Like I know that process, but like joy conditioning is a real thing. Relearning how to feel joy, it's the most joyful work. I mean, it's such amazing work, but it's legitimately work that many of us need to be doing so that we can crack open that door and start to see what's on the other side.
Yeah, so beautiful. And what a great homework assignment.
Heck yeah, that's
Expand
fun. That's some
the
fun homework.
joy. Right. That's super fun homework. How would you suggest that my listeners expand their joy? Like, is there a practice that they can implement,
Yeah.
just even this week? What would you suggest?
Super simple practice. And I will tell this to anybody who's willing to listen. I have a rock. I know that you're not recording video, but I'm holding it for the sake of you seeing it. I have a rock named Penny, and she's how I started practicing this. She brings me joy. So she's a rock who's painted like a penguin and she's holding a heart and she's the cutest thing. And I manifested her into my life. It could be anything. It doesn't need to be Penny the penguin. It could be a pencil. It could be a book you like. It could be a rock that you find. It could be your dentures. I don't care what it is. Just pick something up and think about a joyful memory. The memory that you can think where your heart just like split open with love and joy. So, for somebody I coached recently, it was the moment that the lights come on at a concert. The lights come on and it's just like, oh my God, this is the moment. Or the moment you like step off of the plane in a place that you're so excited in France, the moment you see that chateau and you're like, oh, we're here. Or the moment you take a bite of Beecher's mac and cheese. It could be whatever, like feel that, feel it, like feel it And when you pick up that thing, when you pick up that item, you feel that. And then every time you pick up that item, you feel that. And you do it multiple times a day. Maybe let's give you a number. Do that 5 times a day. Do that 5 times a day for a week. Your body starts to memorize the feeling of joy. It starts to get more comfortable with the feeling of joy. You'll be surprised in the beginning how challenging it kind of feels like it is. But after a couple weeks of doing this, it's like I can just sit here and be like joy, and I feel it. It doesn't necessarily even require a memory. It doesn't require Penny as much as I love her. I don't need her as much as I used to, although I still pick her up in those moments where it's like I feel like I just need to like hone in to myself. But that is something you can build that practice, commit yourself to doing it 5 times a day for 2 weeks, see what happens. I can almost guarantee you that some good things are going to start coming your way and that you're going to start to build your joy capacity over time.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you mentioned that it's awkward at first and it feels very forced. Just like you mentioned, conditioning for a marathon, training for a marathon. Nobody starts training for something new as an expert. We're beginners. If you are expanding your joy capacity and you are remembering a happy feeling, remembering for me, it's not necessarily getting off the plane, it's getting into the car that's taking me to the airport. Because
Oh,
at that point, it's like, okay,
yeah, it's out of my
I'm off.
hands. Here we go.
I'm off. Like everything that's happening at 5 Harvard Road, Bolton, Massachusetts is on its own. And I am heading to the airport. And that is such a, everything that's in my bag is in my bag or it's not coming. So feeling that feeling. And then, as you said, the feeling, whatever it is, and associating that with something that you see that you can physically touch. And it does feel awkward at first to say, I'm remembering that feeling while I'm doing this physical touch thing. It's the melding of something that's happening emotionally and psychologically with something that's happening physically that you can hold in your hand. And then the repetition of that, you are bringing in so many parts of your mind and your memory and your practice and your muscle memory that it creates a new neuro pathway in your brain that every time you pick up that rock, you feel the joy.
Yes. Yes. You did the best job of breaking that down exactly what is happening. It brings you into the present moment because you're touching a thing, taking your mind and your feelings and you're bringing it into the here and now, and then you can feel it. And I will say that my memory that I use to start training this, I still go to is actually, this is really sad, but I'm going to share because it's true. And I think it might validate the people who might have a strange one come up for them when they go to do this activity is the moment where I was holding my dog's paw when we put him to sleep in January, because I felt so much love. My heart was exploding and also ripped to pieces with love, and it's like that love and that joy and the feeling of him being there with me is really tangible for me. And I can legitimately go to that moment anytime. And the therapeutic thing about it is that I actually now associate it so strongly with joy and less with the hurt. It's like
Loss.
the loss. Yes, exactly. But for me, that's the moment that came up. And I thought it was so weird at first, but it has really worked for me. So doesn't have to be a moment of loss, doesn't have to be, a moment like that. But I say that in case any listeners have something that's like, it's not a concert for me. It's not travel for me. It was actually this moment of great, great love and appreciation for something, because that can work really well too.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's such a reminder that that scenario told you you had a capacity for love that you didn't know that you had in you until your sweet Moose.
I
Oh,
know, Moose.
so sweet.
He was the best, happiest, most joyful being on earth. He was seriously the best. I didn't know that I could love as much as I loved him, and I didn't actually learn how much I loved him until he was gone. And I think that's probably the case with a lot of loss. I've been very blessed to have not had as much of that in my life as many of the other people in my life. But man, losing an animal.
Right?
Oh,
Darn them.
I know.
Yeah, it's interesting too, as you mentioned, that feeling can sometimes come from a not a joyful situation. And it's reminding me when I was in college, I was in a pretty major car, not a pretty, I mean, you're either in a major car accident or you're not in a major, I was in a major car accident. The fingerprints of God are all over that situation when I look at where, like how long we had been driving. It was in a van pulling a trailer down a really treacherous part of highway with a canyon, and where it flipped over is a very small part of this road that isn't a sheer drop off,
Oh my gosh.
but that there is flat. I mean, this happened when I was in college. And then as a young adult after college, I actually lived near this portion of highway that I would drive all the time. And every time I would see the space of land that is actually flat and not a ravine, that's where the van flipped over, that we were not, killed in that. I mean, it's just fascinating. So like to see that trigger, instead of reminding me of fear, reminds me of grace and how held I felt and was by God in saving me in that situation. And the trigger for that is when I see a car or a van pulling a trailer and the trailer starts to weave. I'm like, oh, like in my belly, like that is, oh, I don't like that. I don't want to be around that. Just to prove that there are things that happen that spark an emotion in us that's pulled from a memory or a place that can have a bad feeling, but that we can also train our mind and train our bodies to do this, a similar thing with joy. So if anyone's listening and they think, I'm not Wendy, who just delightful all the time. And, I know me and I do wake up happy every day. And I'm very grateful that that's my personality and how it is for me. And I completely understand that that is not everybody's bend. But I do know that if you can identify with a trigger that makes you feel awful in your body, even though an awful thing is not happening to you right now, but you've got that memory, then you are 100% capable of doing the same thing with joy.
Yes. 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 110 times over. That's so true. It's just that we don't talk about that as a society. And hopefully soon we will be talking about it a lot more. I know you and I talk about it. That is true. We can train our bodies to feel all of the feelings, any feeling that we want to focus on, we can focus on feeling it more and more. And joy is definitely one of them. And we are ripe to start feeling a heck of a lot more of it.
And we deserve to be happy. We deserve to feel joy. We deserve good. And that is all.
Yeah, I totally, totally do. Yep.
I have loved this conversation with you, Jen. And I am so happy that there's no chance that we are ending these conversations anytime soon.
Yeah, I hope that it continues. And I look forward to, I mean, congratulations. I want to say congratulations on this big yes to yourself in shifting the podcast into something that feels so aligned for you, because I can see it and I can feel it. And I'm like, that feels perfect for Wendy. Like it just feels so good, even as an outside looking in.
Thank you for saying that. And it's so fascinating. I am doing A Course in Miracles, and every day there's a very short but life altering concept that we focus on. And the morning that I received the note from Jane that she was needing to transition out of the podcast we were doing together, the concept for the day, the principle and practice was, I am determined to see this differently. So whatever it is that comes our way during the day, we are to remember, I am determined to see this differently. So when I read that message, I had just read, I am determined to see this differently. I mean, what a beautiful alignment that those two things would happen on the same day. So I was able to exist and live and thrive and authentically and genuinely release Jane to do what is right and aligned and genuine and authentic for her without thinking that her decision, that her yes to herself was a no to me, because it wasn't. It was, she had her piece of the pie, I had my piece of the pie, and the pie is whole again. And then to be determined, which sometimes I've heard people who I think must have gone through the Course of Miracles or have talked to someone who did, and they'll say, I'm willing to see this differently. And I thought it's so fast, because I had heard that reminder of when you're in a situation that's feeling cantankerous or in conflict or just out of alignment, that you could say, I am willing to see this differently and look for the lesson. But to read the text and to have it say, I am determined to see, that is so active, that is so intentional, that I am determined to see this differently. And it allowed me to just be open. I grabbed my journal. Okay, God, what's next is how I started that page. And then all of this came. I want to continue the podcast. She's asked us to change the name. That actually feels in alignment for me as well. So what would the name be? And I'm thinking, and say yes to yourself. Let me grab my phone and make sure that nobody else is using that. How is that not the title of the podcast already? Oh my word. So it just was all dropping in to my lap. What is next? And in that experience, I had no fear. I had no trepidation. It felt so aligned. And that feeling and the ability to articulate that to Jane later that day in a conversation, we actually recorded. That was our last podcast recording, was us having that quote unquote breakup conversation. She could release me in love, and I could release her in love and excitement for the expansion that was coming for both of us, as our staircases that were right next to each other started to merge in a different direction. It's just beautiful. And I've had people, even women on my trips, ask me, so how was it really when Jane decided to stop the podcast? And I said, oh, it was really exactly what you heard. What's next for her and what's next for me are not the same thing. And we are both so excited about taking our path in a new direction. And it has, of course, we're still friends. Of course, we still chat. Of course, I still see her when I come to France, because hello, she's amazing. France is amazing. Why wouldn't I? And it feels beautiful, but I didn't realize how uncommon that is until people asked me, so how is it really?
Yeah. I think that that's two women being in full integrity with yourselves, and then being willing to be in integrity with that relationship and to end it in an integrous way. Like, you're right that that's not as common as it could be. And I also think that some of that is that scarcity mindset that we've mentioned. And I love that you brought it back around to the pie, because I love pie, but also because it's such a good metaphor for, looking at things differently. And it is the way that you both are looking at that differently that allowed for that relationship to end in such a positive way that is going to launch you both in amazing new directions on your own staircases. They're going to take you to awesome places, even though they're different places. And I also can I say, I had to pull up my phone because this is bizarre, Wendy. Let me see if I can find this text that I got. So I quit my job. I put in my notice at my job last week.
Excited.
Everybody's aware, this can be in the know, but I put in my notice at my job. It felt aligned. There's a million reasons why this was the time for me to do this and say a big heck yes to myself. And this is the biggest heck yes I've ever said to myself, is choosing to leave this job at this time when there is still some uncertainty of my future, but I'm saying yes to the spaciousness. I'm saying yes to the goodness. And so I have to tell you the weirdest text message that I got on the day that that happened. It says, so I get text messages from somebody who I follow, and he's just very in tune with the world. So it's just so serendipitous. It can be easier to hold on to something that is predictable and safe than to let go and trust that what is truly right for you will eventually present itself.
Oh my word. Like that's when you like push the phone away
I
from
know.
you.
I was like, just get it away. What's happening? That's some like heebie jeebie, like so serendipitous. I was like, it's exactly what I needed to hear because my mind was already, I know it's an aligned decision. I know it's the right decision, but so many things around me, so much previous conditioning, the ways that I have thought in the past are trying to creep in and say, what are you doing? This is a dumb decision. You don't have it all figured out. How are you trusting? You know, all of those thoughts are wanting to circle. They're like vultures.
They are.
And receiving that message at that time was perfect. I love your story of that happening for you. And this happened for me. And it's like, we do have to look to what is the confirmation? Like, what are the messages telling me? And follow what feels good, follow what feels right. And I know that this is the right and good decision for me right now.
It's just reminding me when those things happen and we're like, oh my gosh, okay, that is divine. And then how quickly a person, me, we collectively can discount that. But it was probably this. It's like, oh my gosh, please just receive that. Please just receive these little nudges. You want this thing, you get that text, you listen to that podcast, you have a parking place right in the front. Like these are not coincidences. These are divine. Please trust the process. And if you are feeling, you, anyone listening, you, Jen Liss, you, Wendy Harrop, if you are feeling good and seen and heard by the universe in those instances, and then you talk to somebody else and you think they're going to think I'm crazy or they believe that they're, don't talk to that person. Don't talk to that person about this thing. You call me, you DM me. I want to hear about it. I'm going to celebrate you. I am actually in a season right now where what delights me is conversations that are rainbows, unicorns, and champagne flutes. I am actually not available for this season in my life. I am not available for conversations that are centered on negativity or lack. And I don't care if that means I talk to 5 people this year. It doesn't matter to me. Those are the conversations that I'm available for. And I'm just not available for the other ones. And I actually don't mind if anyone listening doesn't think that's a good idea. That it's, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. You should listen to other people's counsel because they are wise. I'm only available for rainbows and champagne flutes and unicorn conversations right now. And I get to decide.
You get to decide. Sign me up for the rainbows and unicorns conversations. I'm always there.
Right?
And the occasional champagne.
Right. The other stuff is going to work out.
Yep.
I don't need to talk about it or be in it or spin or be prepared for every worst case scenario. That is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it is the opposite of surrendering to the outcome and trusting that God knows what he's doing in every area. There's no portion of the way that God works in our lives that says, well, I created the universe, but you come from a broken home. Your parents got divorced, so I'm actually not available to help you with that. Like, it's not what he does. Like, every scenario he already knows about, and he is working everything together for our good. Stop picking up those bags that don't have your name on them. Stop taking the stuff back that you're surrendering, and just live in this joy and bliss and comfort and contentment that God is in control, and just be and serve and do the things that he's calling you to do next. And it's okay if they're all good.
I learn something new from you every time I talk to you, and these fun little phrases that just pour out of you. And one of them is picking up bags with somebody else's name on it. That's so good. That's so
You
good.
would never do that at baggage claim. You would never do that at baggage
Somebody
claim.
did it to me once, though.
Right? And it's terrible. And your bag looked like their bag.
It was the
whatever.
same bag, and she like attacked me when I went over there, and I was like, "Hey, I think that's mine." She's like, "This is mine." I was like, "Oh, no. I actually think." Such a funny experience. But yes, you
And
would
it's
not
funny
do that.
because sometimes we argue why we should be carrying the bag that doesn't have our name on it.
Ooh, so true.
It doesn't have my name on it. And there are a lot of bags on that carousel that don't have my name on it. And they keep coming around, inviting me to pick them up. And I am not available for that.
I love that. Another thing as you're talking about this that this made me think of is we are actively creating our reality all the time. And what you're focusing on does become your reality. So if you are having conversations that are just rainbows and unicorns, your reality is legitimately rainbows and unicorns and champagne. And that
right.
is your actual reality. But so many of us have been focusing for so long on creating a reality of pain and lack and suffering. And, those things are always there. Like, those are there. I totally, like, 100%. That's life. It's necessary to have the good and the bad. There is a balance that is always happening. I'm a firm believer in that. But a lot of us are focusing on it and bringing it into our lives in ways that we don't really need to be. We can choose other things, and we can choose to create our reality in a different way. And you told me this 3 years ago. I would have thought it's super wild. So if any of the listeners are like, something about that sounds good, but I'm not quite getting it, just keep digging. It'll come.
I love that. I heard once that worrying is like praying for something you don't want to happen. So stop doing that.
Worry is the gateway to all of this goodness. This realization about worrying, that it's something you don't need to do, because worrying is intentional suffering. Whatever the way, I'm not sure how you just worded it, but you're choosing to suffer. Worry and doubt are two choices. You choose to worry, you choose to doubt. They're just wasted emotions. Like, you're just wasting so much effort on those two things, and you don't need to be. And that was the gateway really for me, was working on my worry. And once I did that, it's like, oh, now there's something else juicy. And it just gets better from there.
Get the flashlight in
there.
there.
The flashlight. Yep. You can get that worry flashlight, and then you just start to like bring out the big boys. It's fun.
Oh, it's so good. I could obviously talk to you all day long. Thank you so much for this. I cannot wait to continue our conversations.
Yes.
And I wish you all the best, and the Untethered podcast. Everybody go listen. Jen, where can people find you?
Yes, you can find the Untethered with Jen Liss podcast, and anywhere that podcasts are freely available for your ear holes. You can also follow me on Instagram at UntetheredJen.
I love it. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, my friend. I will talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site, or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wright House and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.